Hey, everybody, welcome to Post Nerf Podcast. And this is Dragma, along with my co-host Faranox.
Hello.
And none of the children are joining us today, so that's mostly a good thing.
We might be slightly less entertaining. I warn you now. Especially because I'm partially distracted, but I'll try to make up for that.
So today, in light of, there's been the Cataclysm post-mortem. Sorry,
Mortem.
Mortem. I can't talk today. Post-mortem posts up on the WoW community site talking about what worked and didn't work in Cataclysm in the eyes of the developers. World of Warcraft Cataclysm, that is, of course.
There's some amazingly horrible backlash from the instance developer. I haven't read the Ghost Crawler thing yet.
You know, I didn't read any of the comments, so I don't really know what people have been saying in reaction to these.
Right, well, I'll open them up while we're discussing them, because that would make sense.
Indeed.
I did read the Dungeons and Raids, though, and it was quite disappointing.
Okay, yeah, like, I read all of the articles themselves, just not the comments that were made.
Okay.
So I don't know what the general reaction to these has been from people, but I did read them myself, and I pretty much agree with everything they said, but I'll get to that. So what we're going to be talking about today is basically commenting on what we think worked and didn't work in Cataclysm, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we're excited about in Mists of Pandaria and some of the things that maybe are not that exciting that hopefully they'll change as we look forward to the big press event that's being held, I think, on March 19th, that's going to give us more information about MoP.
AKA Mists of Pandaria.
Indeed. So this is a WoW-only podcast. If you don't like WoW, then start liking it.
Well, considering it's not very often that we really focus on just one thing, but for once, I mean, we're getting to the end of the expansion. If only evidenced by the fact that they're doing these post-mortems. I almost said mortem that time. Curse you. But also because we do have the press conference coming up. And if you just said that, I apologize. I did mention that I was slightly distracted. Trying to find my save files before I reinstall Windows 7. Driving me crazy.
I still need to do my Windows 8 demo on my laptop. And maybe I'll be able to talk a bit about that on our next podcast. By then I will have tried it out. Not that this is really a tech podcast, but I think Windows relates to gaming in a large way. It's a gaming platform. So anyway, you had mentioned the Dungeons and Raids post-mortem. So that's probably a good place to start. It's where we're mostly concerned with the game as raiders and our raiding guild.
Yeah. I want to start by saying there are some good points, and you can agree with some things, but first and foremost, the largest outlash, and I don't know if we want to go at these in order, but let me find it. The biggest outlash from the community is coming from the question, what didn't work out as planned or expected? And of course, we're talking about the Dungeons and Raids, so it's Scott Dalo Mercer, who is the lead designer, lead encounter designer with Blizzard. And the first thing he said was that he felt that the initial dungeons were too difficult.
Which is a controversial subject.
Biggest outlash. Now, yes, they are extremely difficult. They are still difficult. I swear to God, we can go in there with heroic Dragon Soul gear, and we'll still have issues on that stupid fight with
Corla?
What's his name? No, not Corla. On in
the guy in Grim Batol with the different weapons.
Grim Batol, yes. Corla is so easy. I don't even understand how people screw that up, to be perfectly honest. It's just a matter of paying attention, which you have to do for a raid anyway. But yes,
Agreed, yeah.
the initial tier 11 heroics were quite difficult, and they may have been a way too much of an upstep from Wrath of the Lich King. But that was good.
Well, my opinion on it is, well, first of all, what they did is they went back to Burning Crusade dungeon design, and they did that because people were complaining that the dungeons were too easy in Wrath. But here's the thing. I think that they were paying attention to a minority group that was yelling about them being too easy, because then we come to Cataclysm, and we go back to BC dungeon design, and they're really not challenging, in my opinion, for somebody who knows what they're doing, but for a group of puggers, for a group of random people that are, number one, not used to that level of difficulty. Because, I mean, if you think back to Burning Crusade, how many people do you know in the game that have been playing since then? Not really that many compared to the
Most
number
of
of
them
people
have
that
quit.
Yeah, exactly. So most of the people that are actually in the game are Wrath babies, and they're not used to BC difficulty. And that's why people freaked out over it now being too hard. They went from one extreme to the other. And although personally I like challenging 5-mans, I like having that kind of mini raid feel, it wasn't great for the first tier of heroics in the expansion. And we saw the same thing with the first tier of raids. They were tuned too difficult for introductory raids. You couldn't pug them. And that, I think, was a mistake.
And that was the thing. I mean, the other major argument is that they took way too long, and that's something I can seriously agree with. Because you don't want to walk in there. Now, if you have a group that can work together and can listen to instruction and have somebody who knows what they're doing there, it can go a little bit better. But these dungeons, these 5-man dungeons, I'm not even talking about heroic difficulty, just when you first get into them when you're leveling, were insanely difficult. And they took forever, even if you knew what you were doing. It just took way too long.
Yeah.
And now they say that they were trying to design their heroics so that you could do them over a lunch break. 30 minutes, that's good time. 30 minutes of doing a 5-man. We knock out 5-mans in 10 to 15 minutes now.
Yeah. And
most of that is overgearing. Most of that is the difficulty being lowered. The good thing, I loved the tier 11 heroics, and I loved the Zandalaris. Because when we got into those, they were difficult and they were fun. Problem is, we walk out of Firelands and half Firelands gear, walk into the tier 13 heroics and face roll it, with the exception of Queen Ashara, which I will hate until the end of my life. I hate that fight so much. There's so many different variables that could go minusculely wrong. Ridiculous.
Well, the most recent 5-mans, the Hour of Twilight ones, are of course very much like the ICC dungeons in terms of difficulty and length. To me, it kind of feels like this entire expansion has been one big experiment with trying new things and trying to go back to old, Burning Crusade and vanilla practices in some cases. And in the end, they just decided to go back to Wrath practices.
And therein lies... Well, I don't necessarily want to say they went back to Wrath practices, because the dungeons now, they're not that bad. They're tuned for people to walk in and just do them. But they are mildly difficult. You still have to know what you're doing to get through them. And they can be done in a relatively modest amount of time. So I don't want to say we're face rolling in them when we first went into them. Now, anyone who has heroic Firelands gear would have definitely. But anyone who's leveling up, if you go in there with a full pug group of people in normal heroic, like 365 gear, you're going to have some difficulty. It is going to be tough, especially Queen Ashara. God forbid you have an undergeared tank and an undergeared healer.
Well, that's true. I mean, it's been a long time since I've done the endgame Wrath Heroics. But I think probably the fail count in a fully random group is slightly higher now than it was then. So that is true. But it definitely feels a lot more like Wrath, especially in terms of length, than the other dungeons this expansion.
The good thing is you're saying that it's the length, and that's what they're aiming for. So if that's the goal they're looking at, they met that one.
Yes.
But what I was gonna say is that Cataclysm is the experiment expansion.
It is.
They tried to do as much as they could to appeal to us, and by us I mean the entire player base of World of Warcraft. A lot of people, which is humongously feuding within itself. But in doing that, they tested everything they could to try and find the best way to do it. We've got some really good stuff out of it, like Raid Finder. We got some pretty cool raids out of it. We did. There's still a huge argument over the equalization of 10 and 25 man difficulties, which I don't think that's ever going to go away. They need to find a way to design. Well, we can discuss that in a bit, but it was an experimental expansion. The prayer that we should have as a fan base is that they pick all the good things, all the stuff that works, that can appeal to the full player base, and actually put that in and improve it in Mist Pandaria.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the biggest issue with this expansion is that they had to revamp the 1 to 60 zones. And that was necessary to do because they were, I think, 6 or 7 years old when the expansion came out. So they had to do it, but doing it was like remaking the original World of Warcraft. It's a huge amount of work, and therefore resources were taken away from the end game and put into the 1 to 60 experience. So we saw, only 5 levels from 80 to 85 instead of going from 80 to 90. We saw, just overall less content at the end game, fewer raids, arguably less PvP content, or not as deep PvP content maybe as what we saw before.
Right.
But overall, what they did, I thought, was pretty high quality. The raids were some of the best that we've seen, in my opinion, even if some of them were overtuned at first, the first 3 primarily. Dragon Soul, I do have some issues with. It's a fun raid, but it's easy. I mean, I'm not even talking about Raid Finder here, talking about normal mode. It's easier than ICC was.
And that was the one thing. I mean, even now, if those who've been listening to us for a while know that we just came from a really casual server called Cairn. The people that, I mean, these are the lowest end, and that's probably not necessarily true, but these are the lowest end raiders in existence. And they're also the most prideful, and it's really kind of ridiculous. But they cleared normal Firelands within the first 3, or regular Dragon Soul, within the first 3 days. I'm sorry, but if the lowest end raiders, these are not hardcore people, these are not bleeding edge Paragon raiders, if they clear it that quickly, it's too easy.
Yeah, they went from one extreme to the other. Again, they went from raids that aren't puggable at the beginning of the expansion to a raid that can easily be cleared by a pug, provided people are not completely retarded. And forgive me for sounding crude, that's the way I am. Provided you have, average, competent players, they don't have to be really, really skillful, but they know their class, they have decent gear. A pug can easily clear Dragon Soul in one night.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a big switch, and I thought Firelands was more of a happy medium. If the raids were all tuned the same as Firelands, that would be, I think, ideal. Because Firelands, you could pug the first 4 bosses or so, at least on the old server that we were on, where people were generally quite terrible. You could pug the first 4 bosses, and the last few were really hard to do with pugs. You'd need a full guild group, again, on that server, to do the last 3 bosses. But
yeah,
on the server we're on now, you could probably still have pugged it at the proper gear level, but... but
I'm being quiet because I'm trying to decide what other games I even have saved data that I want to save, and I don't think there are any other than Mass Effect.
In terms of overall encounter design, we saw some of the coolest encounters that I've ever seen in my raiding career. And I've also gone back and seen a lot of the old ones, so I'm pretty familiar with raid encounters throughout the history of the game, and we saw, I think, some of the coolest ones. I am disappointed with Deathwing. I'm disappointed with the last encounter of the expansion.
Just Madness?
Both as a package.
Okay. Because a lot of people were saying, oh, well, they were trying to make it all cinematic, but it really didn't feel like that. It kind of felt like the immersion in Spine was just ridiculous. Personally, I kind of like it. It's probably not very immersive, but I love the fact that some idiot decided to say, oh, well, there's no indication of whether or not he's going to turn. Obviously, you're not playing with DBM.
Yeah.
But I think the best thing they could have done to change that fight in one respect is have him randomly decide to flip and give you some kind of vocal warning. Hey, I'm about to do this. You better get ready. Rather than everyone standing in the middle and him never moving.
But I mean, for me...
Now that could, of course, become incredibly unlucky if you got an amalgamation to 9 stacks and then he flipped.
Yeah.
But...
that would suck. But I mean, I think they went in the right direction in terms of having 2 separate encounters for the same boss, but they're both ad fights. That's what I don't like. Yeah. It would be one thing if the first one was an ad fight, but the second one, I want to be actually fighting Deathwing, not, arm tentacles and all this shit.
I think the only thing they could have done to change that is if they made it kind of a Twilight Princess Ganondorf versus Link kind of thing. If he took human form for a certain portion of the fight and then flew up into the air and dropped ads every once in a while. Because he is honestly way too big. Now, the models don't really show it to the best extent, but he is supposed to be like 3 to 4 times larger than any of the other aspect dragons.
Yeah, he's definitely very big. And that was probably
I don't think there would have been any way we could honestly have fought him like we did, say, Nefarian or Onyxia. Well, I don't think they even could have designed a stage that we would have been able to fit in.
Yeah, and they probably didn't want to have another, dragon-style fight, because they've done that so many times, including once in this expansion. Sinestra I don't count in that, because that was more like Kill Jaden.
Yeah.
But they obviously didn't want to go with a standard dragon fight again either, so that was the compromise, but it just still... for me, because they're both ad fights, it feels anticlimactic for me. It doesn't feel like you're actually fighting the end boss of the game.
And I can understand that. A lot of people, the major discussion on Dragon Soul as a raid is there are some people who feel like you're the pawns being put in the way of all the cannon fodder so that the real heroes can do the job. And of course, there are some who feel like you are significantly helping the aspects while they're working with the dragon, with the dragon soul, which is what it's called, the little coin, aka the demon soul. It gives the entire raid its name. But that's where it really comes down to is, are you the cannon fodder, or are you actually the major heroes of the expansion? Because every time you actually engage Deathwing, it's either because Thrall has already shot him with the Dragon Soul, or so that he can do significantly more damage to him with the Dragon Soul.
Yeah.
So I can understand those points of view, if nothing else. But personally, as someone who has seen the content, I am a fan of the lore. From a lore point of view, looking at how it played out, I don't mind. I kind of like it. Not looking at the fact that it's an ad fight, the fact that you are working to this great extent. Now, half the raid has nothing to do with the final encounter. It's defeating the forces that are keeping you from actually engaging the boss.
Right.
In fact, you could say the first 5 fights are like that. Now, when you get to War Master Blackhorn, then you are in the process of actually attacking Deathwing. You attempted to engage him, he shot one of the gunships out of the sky, and you're on the only remaining one trying to get at him. And then when you actually get a chance to shoot, you knock off his armor and have to go peel off the rest of it so that you can actually knock him out of the sky. And on that same note, that is actually one of the major things that was mentioned in the post-mortem and is in discussion with the community, is the sense of conclusion that you get from this. We start the expansion with a major cinematic of Deathwing's armor being put on him. And then in the final battle, you actually rip it off.
Yeah.
So that you can kill him.
Which is cool. And I mean, all of the fight mechanics in Dragon Soul, even though they're fairly simple, are fun. Except Madness. For me, Madness is very repetitive. And Spine, too. They're very repetitive. You're repeating the same cycle, which you can say arguably is the same for any raid fight, but
the quickest fight in the dungeon. If you do it right on every chance you get, then you can easily clear that fight faster than any other fight.
Yeah.
And in that regard, it is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and Madness is a long fight, but it's long because it's drawn out, it drags out.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Lich King was a long fight that was epic. Like, I find myself getting bored on Madness. You were never bored when you did the Lich King. You're sitting there sweating because at any moment the whole raid could wipe from one little fuck-up.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get the same feeling from the Deathwing fights.
And on that note, I mean, the only way you even come into that instance with Madness is if a tank takes 2 impales, which is nearly impossible. There's no reason you should be unless you just have that much epic heals and DPS. Some people do it that way. Personally, I don't look forward to trying that.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got the DPS to kill the tentacle before the second impale, it's perfectly viable. But
I mean, that's the only reason you're going to mess up in that fight, unless there's not enough DPS on the tentacle, and you can't prevent the Cataclysm. But so point being, where in the Lich King there were 3 to 4 mechanics that you had to avoid. In Madness there are 2, and they're all too easy to avoid.
Well, and one thing about Madness, the difficulty of Madness will vary depending on your raid comp. It'll vary depending on your platform order. Whereas with the Lich King, it was just plain a hard fight. Even if you were good. I mean, they didn't down... Paragon didn't down it on 25-man Heroic until the 5% nerf. So, it was a hard fight.
Okay, so that puts some recent information that we've gotten into a different light. I didn't know that. I'm not going to say what that information is, but I didn't know that. Also, welcome Vasilionos.
Hello.
That they still needed the 5% to kill Deathwing, but
on Lich King, not Deathwing.
Oh, Lich King. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the Lich
I
King,
thought
they
you were
couldn't do it till it was nerfed. Deathwing, the only issues people had with Deathwing was they were all getting suspended because they fucking cheated.
Yeah.
But yeah, they didn't need any nerf to down that.
But yeah, so welcome Vasilionos. If
One of the
you're
children
just
has
coming
joined
in,
us.
one of the children. We're discussing Cataclysm post-mortem. Mostly the raids and instances right now.
Okay.
So do you have any specific significant commentary to add to what was your opinion in general with the raids and dungeons and
Well,
Cataclysm?
I thought that the dungeons were very fun up until the new one. I really just do not like them. And the raids were... I loved Firelands, just wish that the trash was not so long. The fight mechanics in those were just amazing.
Ugh,
and-
not Rylith.
Yeah,
except for
Rylith.
Rylith, of course. And
Turn left. Turn right. Turn left. Oh, you
That-
stepped on a volcano.
That fight,
Turn left.
and I'm sorry to interrupt
like
you
a
in the middle
glorified
of
GPS.
your thing, but that fight is one of the exceptions I was going to note of bad encounter design this expansion. I hated that. It was stupid. It's not that it was really hard, but it was just dumb. And I hope they never do anything similar to that again. But please continue.
all of the tier 11 was very fun when we did it in Firelands. So yeah, I think the raids and Cataclysm were a lot of fun, and I liked them better than Wrath, except for World War. But that's just me.
As someone who
Alduar
didn't
is a
get to see
fan
much
favorite.
of the content in Wrath, I'm slightly disappointed that I couldn't get to see much of it. Although Mimeron, when we finally went back and had fun with him, that was amazing. And I'm so glad we didn't try it with the button.
Well,
Maybe one day. Maybe one day.
you know, a lot of people are calling for the Alduar hard mode design to make a return. And there's been some hints that that might come in Mists. So
I'm
we'll see what
hoping,
happens.
because the cool thing about the hard modes, like, if only in the case, I don't honestly know if this is the case otherwise, but if only in the case of Flame Leviathan, it's a progressive difficulty increase. You can decide, hey, we want to increase the level by this much by turning these two things on. That would be amazing. And it adds a lot more fun to the game. Now, of course, progression raids, they're going to clear it with all the hard modes engaged, probably, and then go on, and then just, they're done. They're going to clear it without, and they're going to clear it probably with full hard modes. But the cool thing is, the more casual raiders, and when I say more casual raiders, I mean the people who do still kind of cling to the hardcore side of raiding and aren't, progressing in Raid Finder. They're going to turn on the hard modes because it's fun. Because they want to add a little something different to the fight because it's more fun that way. And you know what? I completely endorse that. That is amazing. And it was an amazing concept.
I personally am on the fence about it. I don't really know what my opinion is, to be honest. I like it and I don't. I kind of like to see both styles of hard mode in the game, but I don't see how they could do that without kind of alternating on the raids, which would be weird.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
The best way they could do that is if they could do it. They could do it. You can only do it really one way, and that is to combine it, kind of. So you have normal difficulty, and then you have switches you can activate to make the fight a little bit harder. Maybe that switch over to a different loot table or add certain extra pieces of loot onto the loot table. And then you have heroic mode, which is just the normal mode increased for heroic. And you still have the heroic versions of those challenge modes. So that's what we could do. We could see, if I were to suggest anything, I would suggest normal mode and heroic mode with normal and heroic challenge modes.
Okay.
That would be an amazing concept.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what it was. It wasn't heroic mode in Ulduar. There wasn't really, because if you look at it now, I mean, by the definition of heroic mode now, it's a matter of there's normal mode and then you flip a switch and it's heroic mode.
Yeah, and you didn't have
And
the
it's
extra
just
set of
heroic
gear.
mode. But with Ulduar, it was a matter of we could do it this way, or we could make it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
So
and
in my mind, I see Ulduar heroic modes as challenge modes. If we went with the current normal to heroic design and then added challenge modes in both, that would be awesome. And the progression options would be that much cooler.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Because I mean, the major downside of the Ulduar style is you get the achievements for doing the hard mode, but you don't get the extra gear set. You don't get the better gear.
Yeah.
So
the concept of having
them...
challenge mode gear, I mean, and you could even kind of do like what they're doing with Raid Finder right now. You could say, okay, well, you've cleared it on normal, you can get this gear. Oh, but if you activate the challenge mode, that gear actually increases a little bit between normal and heroic gear. And if you do it on heroic, that gear is even more powerful than heroic gear. Now, that would, of course, mean probably that base heroic gear would be that much more powerful. Like, the challenge mode gear would be heroic gear compared to what we have now. But that would be a pretty cool concept. And it's kind of just like evolving in my head as we're talking about it.
What else was I going to say about Cata dungeons? Oh, the Zandalaris were probably my favorite. Out of all the 5-mans they did. They, of course, had a real raid feel to them because they were raids before.
Oh, yeah.
And again, they were tuned to be quite difficult at first, and the main downside to the difficulty for me of the heroics at first was people were just at each other's throats, more so than usual, and there doesn't need to be any reason in this game to make people even more on edge, because they tend to lash out at each other for little or no reason as it is. And you would have people rage quitting and bitching at each other constantly. But the dungeons themselves were really fun, especially if you had a guild group. They were very long, and they've since shortened them, but I really like them.
Those
thing, go ahead, Vec.
Those were also probably my favorite, especially when I was with a guild group, because I did not like the pugs because they would not listen, and then when you tried to help them, they'd be mean to you.
The biggest issue with the Zandalaris was that every pug wanted a bear run.
Basically.
And there was no possible way. It wasn't possible. Now, granted, in a lot of cases, the only way you were going to get a bear run was in a pug, because the buff. But there's just you can't rush it. You go into a pug like that, you can't expect flat out success.
It's very rare that you get 5 good players. Usually there's at least one that fucks everything up.
And not to mention that, but it has to be 5 good players with 5 good sets of gear.
Yeah.
That probably shouldn't even be in the dungeon in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
The major arguments, again, from the community, in that regard, though, was that the Zandalaris just took too long. They existed for far too long. They shouldn't have been in the game as long as they were. And in that regard, I can agree. Because we saw 2 patches for this one set of heroics. And we did not see another set of heroics until Dragon Soul.
Yeah.
I'd definitely rather be doing getting my valor points through the Zandalaris than through the Hour of Twilight stuff.
Yeah, but at the time, I mean, there were a lot of people who were just getting, I switched back to regular heroics here and there because I was so tired of the Zandalaris. And mostly because I was tired of the groups in them. But what was suggested in the discussion about Dungeons and Raids was actually that they probably should have released another set of dungeons for Firelands. The downside being, of course, that would have probably taken the place of Molten Front. But it would have been cool.
I would have way rather had new dungeons than more daily quests. I loathe daily quests. And the daily quests basically serve the same purpose as dungeons. They give you extra income and they give you new gear.
Yep.
But the difference is dungeons are fun and dailies are grindy and not fun. So
I feel like dungeons can be very grindy too.
They can, but they're more dynamic. You're playing with other people. You're actually
You never know what's
playing.
gonna fuck up the situation.
Whereas dailies are just the same damn stupid thing over and over again. I hate dailies.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, in dungeons you can do weird things and get away with it, like pulling that cat boss all the way out of it too.
Oh, that was amazing. That's an amazing story. That was awesome. Unfortunately, they hotfixed it right after we discovered that. Oh, it was the biggest upset ever. But we pulled I don't even remember her name, but we pulled her all the way out of the boss area and onto the side roads and got absolutely no ads. We're all freaking out. The cats are going to be coming any minute. And then she's dead and we're like, wow, that was cool.
That was... Oh, High Priestess killed Nara.
Yeah. I was trying to think of the deity name. But yeah, that was amazing. That was amazing.
But I mean...
That's one thing. I mean, dungeons, just because they're multiplayer, have the potential to be that much more fun.
Yeah, and that's what this game is all about. You know, dungeons and raids are where you can stretch your legs and actually play your character. Dailies are just filler content, and I do not like filler content.
Mm-hmm. I didn't read any of them, but another thing that has happened recently, very off topic from this discussion, to be perfectly honest, was that we got the new Scroll of Resurrection, which is an amazing concept with what they brought to the table, because it allows people who haven't played for 90 days, or who it doesn't glitch out on, because it was glitching out with me back in the day, but it allows them to immediately level a new character or a character that's pre-existing to 80 and server change, faction change.
So, what's the thing with that? Like,
the biggest problem, you can give it to anyone who hasn't played within 90 days. And they also get Cataclysm for free with it.
So they get Cataclysm for free, and all they have to do is just start playing again as long as they give them the Scroll of Resurrection.
Well, free for a week. It is a 1 week thing.
Okay.
But yeah, they can play for a week full Cataclysm starting at level 80. The biggest argument for this is, and there are two. There's the argument, and then there's the counter argument. The argument is, oh well, now we're going to have an influx of people who don't know how to play their class. Because it's basically I haven't read any of these threads, but I kind of peeked at a couple of them. The biggest argument is probably along these lines: is that, oh well, they're getting the Scroll of Resurrection, they might as well be buying their character off of eBay, because they're not going to know their class. Now the counter argument to this is that it doesn't matter. Be perfectly flat out, it doesn't matter, because the questing you do, if you do straight 1 to 80 in questing, you have no comparison to whether or not you're doing your class right. I mean, even if you read the talent, if you read your talents, you will do very well. I promise you that. So I never read up on my class until I got into ICC. And I still very rarely read about my class. I just look at my talents. But you don't learn your class while you're questing, to be perfectly honest, because you're going to get to end game and you're still not going to know how to DPS correctly.
Well, the fact is the content from 1 to 80 has been tuned so that you can complete it not knowing what the fuck you're doing.
True.
And we see that over and over again. The majority of the player base doesn't know how to play their class. You see that in 5-mans every day. At the heroic 5-man level, most people don't know how to play this game. It's just a fact. And even if they've leveled from 1 to 85, they don't know what they're doing.
The lovely days are when we see people in Firelands ready gear doing 3k DPS.
But I mean, seriously. So
continuing
really
that counter argument.
Deal.
Continuing that counter argument, though, yeah, they're not going to know their class regardless. But they're going to, most intelligent people are going to read up on their class before they get to raids anyway.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who cares will do it.
So the argument, the major arguments are they're not going to know their class. We're going to have this huge influx of noobs out there. But
that's going to happen anyway.
A lot of people, yeah, that's been happening. But a lot of people are going to level that class to 80. And then read up on it before they go into Cataclysm 5-mans.
Well, I mean, I'm famous in our guild for looking up a class's elitist jerks when I start at level 1.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of us do that. Some of us are perfectionists, but most people aren't, and most people never look up their class. Most people also never raid.
I didn't look up priests until probably Cataclysm, but I did look up my druid when I got to level 50, maybe, just because I wanted to make sure I was, even level 15, just because I wanted to make sure I was getting the right talents, which that'll be phased out in Mist of Pandaria a little bit, but yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. It kind of goes along with my rant from last time. Well, you know what? I'm not going to continue that thought because I can't remember what my rant was last time now because it just left my head as soon as I said that.
But I mean, people just always complain about everything. They always will. Personally, I think it's a pretty genius way to get people back into the game. And if you're getting new people into the game, whether they're noobs or not, that's good. We just need more people in the game, and maybe noobs can come in and eventually become not noobs.
Now, I think the major concept, and it's kind of gone the way of Recruit a Friend, because you do get a free mount out of it. I think it might be faction-based, but you get a free Spectral Wyvern or Griffin out of it if the person you invite back comes back. But I think the major thing, I mean, with it and Recruit a Friend, is that you're the mentor. You're the person who's inviting them back and saying, hey, you should play this again. Somewhere in there, it should be lined out, you are responsible for this person. You're the one inviting them back. You're the one who is saying, okay, you should come back. Let me help you get back into the game.
And I would assume, unless you're just in it for the free mount, that's what you'd be doing anyway. You'd be wanting to play with that person.
Yep.
I mean, that's what I would be doing if I wanted to bring my noob hunter friend back into the game. I would show her the ropes, show her what's changed, because she hasn't played since Wrath. The class plays totally differently, and I love doing that anyway. Yeah. I love blabbing my head off. I do it all the time, so that's what I would be doing. And yeah, that's what everybody should be doing, really. Play with them. I'm sorry. Go out and do some quests, do some dungeons.
Yeah.
Show them how to do it.
Yeah. It really is a simple concept that it is arguable that most of the player base is probably missing out on. That's the biggest problem. Is it's such a community game, but you get a lot of new players that just get forced out of the game because there are so many elitists and so many prideful players out there that they're not willing to help.
Yeah,
and really sad.
I can sort of see where the mentality comes from as somebody who's figured everything out himself. For people to want hand-holding through everything, it does get annoying, but there's no need to be an asshole about it. If you don't want to answer them, don't talk to them.
Yep.
And that's what I do. I just don't talk to them. And every once in a while, I'll be in a helpful mood and I'll answer somebody's question. I just usually find that if you give a dog a bone, they come back and ask for more. That's the biggest issue that I have.
And the only issue with that is you gotta kind of know how to measure it, because if they're asking for advice, you can say, okay, well, this is how you fix this. If you want more information, you can go here. It's okay. Let me rephrase that. It's not about measuring what they're going to ask for. It's about providing the information where they can go get it themselves, and then kind of enforcing that. So yeah, if you help someone, they're going to come back for more answers because they know you'll help them. But if you say, oh, so this is how you do this, you do it this way, if you do this, this works. If you'd like to look into it more, here's this website that can help you. Or you can go to the forums and look at this. And then you just kind of have to enforce that. Go ahead.
Sorry, people are just generally not willing to go outside the game for information. And a lot of people react really negatively to, go to such and such website. They're just not used to that concept. They're used to having all the tools given to them in the game to figure things out. And praise the gods if that ever actually happens. That would be an amazing thing. There have been rumors, either rumors or suggestions of a training camp, which is an amazing concept and would be awesome if you actually had NPCs that would explain to you somewhat the ins and out of your class. But right now, the only way to learn your class is to go outside of the game. And even in asking your guildmates, you're going outside of the game to learn, because they got all their information from outside. They're not NPCs in the game. They're real people that you're talking to. And they're probably going to tell you, hey, go here. This is where I learned everything. I say this as a public service announcement to any new players to the game. If you're going to ask for something, expect to have to leave the game to find out about it. Simply because that's the only way to do so. Yeah. I mean, you can, if you are really observant and really smart, you can figure out all the shit that they put on those websites yourself just by looking at your talents, looking at how the class, like all of your abilities in game and experimenting, but it takes hours to theory craft all that information. Is why everybody just, goes and looks at it, because there's some geeks that have nothing better to do. They do all the theory crafting, they put it up on the website for other people to read, and thank God they do.
Yeah. Of course, I was kind of going with, I just said that because you did point out the time. I'm serious, people. Now, I kind of just screwed it up on myself because doing it with the priest holy spec, just because I hate the holy spec so much. But I swear to God, if you go through and read each one of your talents, you'll realize, oh, this one supports this one. And if I use them together, they'll work really, really well.
Well, and even when you use a cookie cutter spec from a website, you should never just plug it in and not look at the talents. In my opinion, you really should read them and understand why that's the proper spec to play, because you'll play your class better.
Yeah, exactly. Vec, do you have anything you want to add?
I've just been kind of taking this all in. I kind of agree with you on all that, except when I used to play my mage back in Wrath, I never really went outside of the game. I just kind of figured everything out on my own, and then it worked all the way through Wrath, and I was pulling pretty good numbers. But then Dragma kind of went, no, you're playing your class wrong, and it was a rotation that I knew many other mages to do. And I just never looked at Elitist Jerk, which had the better rotation for it. And so it was kind of, yeah.
It could have been, too, that the rotation changed between expansions. I mean,
That
I
probably
don't have
could've
any idea how mages played in Wrath, because I didn't play a mage in Wrath. But just the way an arcane mage is designed, you spam Arcane Blast, you evocate, you spam Arcane Blast again. And when you are really low on mana, you can't evocate, you switch to the 4-stack and Arcane Missiles, and that's how you conserve mana till you can evocate again. It's a burst spec.
And I always just did the 4-stack Arcane Missile, and that's just how I learned it.
But yeah, and a lot of people do that too. A lot of people will just kind of figure things out themselves, but not high-end raiders. A high-end raider is always going to be either amongst the theory crafters that are really trying to get their best numbers and they spend hours trying to figure it out, or they are listening to the theory crafters themselves. That's really the only way to get the most out of your class. And if you're a progression raider, you have to do that. If you're not a progression raider, you don't. And most people aren't, so they don't care.
But you will benefit greatly, whether you're a progression raider or not, to actually do that. We promise you.
Well, I mean, if you do a lot of 5-mans, you can avoid some ridicule. That's one thing.
Yeah. This is true. This is true.
I mean, personally,
yeah,
I quietly ridicule people for not playing their class right. I never say it to their face. But
I am a horrible person when it comes to group kicks. In leveling my druid from 1 to 73, I built up enough kicks that as soon as I entered a dungeon, I had a basic cooldown of 8 hours before I could kick someone. It was literally impossible for me to kick someone unless somebody else initiated it.
The only time that I'll ever vote kick someone is if they are continuously fucking up in the same way and just screwing the group up.
Like that rogue that we had in that
exactly
spine kill on Raid Finder. That was ridiculous.
Exactly.
But yeah, we've really derailed the topic, I'll say that much.
Yeah, I think we can pretty much wrap up the Dungeons and Raids segment and talk about something else.
So here's what I'm gonna do, because I haven't read. Did you end up reading the Ghost Crawler post-mortem?
I did.
Okay, then I'll let you lead that. I was going to start off by just going, okay, I'm just going to read off the questions and we'll discuss it ourselves.
Ghost Crawler's post-mortem basically covered everything, because, I mean, he's the lead systems designer. So, he talked a bit about the zones, the 80 to 85 zones. And like I mentioned before, that content suffered because they put so many resources into the 1 to 60 revamp. One of the major things that he pointed out, which I wholeheartedly agree with, is that things felt disjointed with the 80 to 85 zones because we didn't have a unified continent that we were traveling through. Everything was kind of spread out around the world. You were going through portals from your main city to get to the new zones. And it was just not as fluid as BC and Wrath were, because in those expansions you were in a continent with all the new zones in one area.
Yep.
And once you were finished leveling to 85, there wasn't a whole lot of content to do outside of the major cities. You spent most of your time sitting in Org or Stormwind queuing for dungeons, or waiting for raids to come together, or queuing for battlegrounds or arenas or whatever you're doing. And of course they want to change that in Mists. They want to get people outside of the cities and doing other things, which is great, because that is definitely one thing that did not work in Cataclysm.
But in one regard, content aside, you do have to say that if only in the regard of how far we had to travel, how much changed. Cataclysm was an epic expansion, and by epic I mean I'm not talking about, you know, the typical descriptor that we throw around for video games nowadays. I'm talking about like Iliad epic, the actual descriptor for a story. The entire world was ripped apart, and you literally had to travel from one corner to the other into different planes of existence in order to gather your power to face these enemies again. So in regards to that, if someone wrote a story about, you know, their character from 80 to 85 into Dragon Soul, it would be an epic. It's because you have to do so much to actually get to that point.
And the story was great. I liked the story a lot. I maybe didn't like it quite as much as Wrath or BC, but I did like it a lot. I just think that in a lot of places they had difficulty translating it into the game. The actual game itself suffered from the story in some places.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, one example of that is the way the zones were laid out. They kind of had to do it that way because you had to have this global feel. The whole world has been affected by the Cataclysm. It's not all just in one localized area. So you have to have zones that are spread apart, but it's still, you can't help but feel like things are a bit disjointed as a player when you're going through this. And that's just the way it had to be. So, what the hell else did he talk about? He talked a bit about, the dungeons, which we already talked about. He talked about the level revamp.
That's funny. When asked what didn't work out as planned. Now that was one major thing with the dungeon, the encounter designer, whose name I already forget because he's not important. Not as important as Ghostcrawler, I'll say that. He's like, oh, everything worked out fine. I love how, you know, after this long discussion about the zones, he's asked this question, Ghostcrawler's asked this question, and he says, you know what? Nothing else worked. We screwed up on everything.
Yeah, and like he talked about the 1 to 60 revamp, which was very successful. I think everybody can agree. It's awesome. It's so much better than the original vanilla 1 to 60 experience was. But as far as things that didn't work, I think he talked a bit about the talent tree revamp, which is entirely his area, and the talent tree revamp didn't, I think, do what they wanted it to. They kind of, like, it's definitely, I think, better than the Wrath talent trees were, because the Wrath talent trees had a whole lot of garbage and just a whole lot of crap that you didn't even want. Now we have significantly less garbage, but we also have a lot of stuff that is mandatory to take.
Yeah.
And you basically have stuff that's mandatory and stuff that is crap. There's no gray area. There's no decision making.
PvP.
Yeah, like there's no real decision making to be made when you're picking your talents, because there's either the talents you want or the talents you don't want. And a lot of the talents you want are really kind of trivial things like increases to your damage on a certain ability. It's boring passive bonuses. And that's what they want to get rid of in MoP. They want your talents to be meaningful choices that actually change the way you play, and that don't necessarily give you an advantage or a disadvantage in any particular situation. Although they are making it so that it's easier to change them, because some of the talents are situationally beneficial, right? So they're making it so that you can change them like glyphs. But yeah, the main thing with Cataclysm talents is that they force you into a cookie cutter spec, which is boring.
Yeah. That's one thing. The new Mist of Pandaria stuff is definitely going to be a lot more fluid. I mean, we can change our specs in the field, we've heard. The biggest issue is that there's so much flack in the talents. So, a couple of classes, I believe, have been completely revamped already. I'm hoping there's a lot more to be done in the beta, because I look at the priest talents and I'm like, this is all PvP stuff. I'm not going to use any of this in PvE. How could I possibly? It's really disjointed towards PvE, and I'm very much looking forward to significant changes throughout most of the specs, because it's bad.
It's guaranteed that they will completely change over the next few months, and I'm sure the end product will be great, because it's a great concept. It just requires a lot of testing and refinement to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the actual talents themselves go, I am definitely seeing a lot of kind of PvP geared talents across many of these classes. But I don't know. Maybe now isn't the right time to talk about it. Yeah, because I could go on forever about it and just go off on a completely different tangent. We'll save that for another time.
No, we need to focus on Cataclysm for now, because we've already derailed and re-railed as it is.
So yeah, the talents were kind of a letdown. Archaeology, I know he mentioned, because that was one that I hated. That was one thing I didn't like. The concept of having something to do when you have nothing else to do is great, but it would be so nice if it wasn't so boring and if it wasn't so much of a time sink that, like, okay, this is coming from somebody who has Professor on one of his tunes and has Vial of the Sands.
Yeah.
If I were to figure out how many hours I spent doing that, I would probably be depressed for 2 weeks. Because it takes such a long time.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous.
The frickin' RNG can be nothing short of punishing. It's absolutely terrible. And I will never do it again unless they really revamp it and make it more streamlined. Or maybe make it account-wide. That would be nice.
Archaeology is just one of those things that I tried and then gave up on because I just didn't care. It is. Archaeology is the most clunky thing ever. First of all, you have to find a dig site, which could be in any zone, all over the world. So you have to fly from the tip of a continent down to the bottom of it. Thankfully, they put it on the map. Thank God for that. But you had to fly it all the way across the continent, then go to the other one, fly all the way across that. Then when you got your levels high enough, go to Outland or Northrend and do the exact same thing. And it's just... it's retarded. It's overdone.
Yeah. And the biggest reason for that is the large amount of travel time. And
yeah.
One thing that we can be sure of in MoP is that at least going from 525 to 600, it'll be shorter travel times because they're all on the same continent, right? But I don't know what they're planning on doing to fix going up to 525.
Yeah.
Hopefully a lot. But yeah.
Well, with any luck, they'll kind of connect it, maybe, with other stuff. I don't know. They need to find a way to maybe boost the initial gain from actual... Maybe they just need to make it tier up a little bit better. You get to a certain level and stuff starts giving you a little bit more experience or something. I don't know, but I think some of that was tied to specific regions, which was really ridiculous.
They need to increase the number of drops that you get when you do a survey, which they've already done once, and it wasn't good enough. They need to do it again. We need to get more drops from each survey. And they need to increase the spawn rate of rare artifacts, in my opinion, because it takes so long to get the ones that you want, because you go through so many commons, and then you go through so many rares that you don't want before you get the one you want.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's definitely an issue.
so there's that.
I'm actually.
Oh, you're gonna say something?
Wow, he speaks.
I never actually leveled a profession up all the way to 525 except for tailoring, and I bought matched like all of that and spent like 5k gold just because I didn't want to level. And so I kind of did that, and then I was gonna go mining on my paladin, and I got that up to like 100, but I never did it because it was too boring. And then I got to archaeology, and I'm like, I should do that. It seems fun. And I got to like 75.
We should point out that this is the kid who says, "Oh, that takes effort."
Well, I mean, it's just so boring. I mean,
And which you know what I did? I listened to music, watched things on YouTube, and watched movies while I farmed mats. How do you think I bothered to get, 500 bars of Elementium? Oh god, I am never doing that again.
Yeah, I usually listen to a podcast while I'm doing it, and I'll usually be queued up for something. So you have to wait anyway. As a DPS player, I don't get instant queues like you do.
Healing queues have been pretty damn nice recently, too.
Yeah. Vec is a tank, just so that everybody knows. He gets instant queues.
Okay, I have to point this out. I have to point this out. People were complaining so much about Dragon Soul, about looking for raid, and
about what?
About the DPS queues, and then it popping for a half-completed raid.
Oh, wow.
First of all, you can't fix the DPS queue issue, but I laugh at anyone who popped in there not knowing what to expect when you can look at it and say, "Oh, I queued for Fall of Deathwing, and it says 3 of 8 completed."
Yeah, that means that 3 out of the 4 in that wing have been done.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it says that, but it's pretty easy to figure out.
Yeah. They really should. That's something they need to fix, because that needs to be tied specifically to that. There's no excuse for that being like that.
The only thing I don't like about it is, with the queues, is that tanks no longer get an instant.
Only because you have to actually have 2 of them.
I know.
And 5 healers.
And healers get a faster queue than tanks do.
I do find that hard to believe, I will admit.
I get almost as much of a queue as DPS sometimes.
But I think it works great. On average, I wait 15 to 20 minutes as a DPS, which is not much worse at all than queuing for a 5-man. In fact, it's pretty much the same thing. I have no problem with that at all. But this is from somebody who used to have to endure hour-and-a-half queues for 5-mans at the beginning of the expansion. And I don't know if these people that are complaining about this have experienced that, but that is fucking retarded. And the call to arms thing obviously fixed that. That was genius. And then as far as the raids go, there's just such a large volume of people that are doing it. And a 25-man is easy to put together. So it goes pretty quickly. And I love it. I think it works exactly the way it should. Legendaries. One of the biggest balancing issues, if not the biggest balancing issue we've seen this expansion in both PvE and PvP, was Dragon Wrath, because it was available to way more specs than a legendary should be available to, and way more classes. You're looking at balanced druids, mages, warlocks,
priests,
shadow priests, elemental shaman, not hunters.
Yeah.
So that's 5 classes I can think of off the top of my head. I think that's all of them that were using that legendary. A legendary that reportedly, and I no one in our guild has it, and I haven't ever used it myself, but reportedly you're looking at like a 10k DPS increase in Firelands gear when you pick up that legendary, and it's still relevant in Dragon Soul up until you get into heroic level gear as a caster. It's best in slot when you're not getting the 416 Deathwing weapons. So, apparently they don't want to do that again. They want to make the legendaries not only specific to one class, but they want to be a lot... They want them to be a lot more difficult to get, because this was a really easy legendary to get if you were in an active raiding guild. You could complete it in like 6 weeks, I think, if you raided twice a week. Like if you, if you cleared the raid every week, you would get it in about 6 weeks. And so everybody who raids has this thing. And that's a bit ridiculous. It's less of a legendary. It's more like just any epic weapon that you get. So they're going to change that, apparently, and that's a smart decision. And it better be a hunter bow, the next one.
No, tanky one.
That's a discussion we've had on a previous podcast.
Yeah. What else did you talk about?
Yeah, go for it. Yes. I'm sorry, I'm distracted again. This time, apparently, one of our admins on the Facebook accidentally logged as the page and posted twice.
Oh.
So that's funny.
Now I'm looking at the article to see what I forgot about.
I'm looking at it too.
We already talked about the zones pretty much. We could elaborate a little bit. Like me personally, as far as the 80 to 85 zones go, Vajir was stunningly beautiful visually. And
I hated the quests there, though.
Yeah, the questing experience in Vajir sucked. For one thing, it took way too long to get going. That was the biggest thing. And for that reason alone, I have never done Vajir other than the first time I did it, which was on my main. I've since leveled 3 other characters through the new content, and I have not done it again. I always go to DhLegacy because it is just a lot quicker and smoother to get going. But yeah, visually the art style was amazing, and I loved riding around on a seahorse. I'd like to see that again, just maybe in a zone that isn't so slow and boring.
Yeah.
DhLegacy was very linear, and a lot of the zones felt very linear, which is kind of a disappointment, because it doesn't give you the feeling of being able to explore and kind of do what you want. You have to go to specific areas and follow a specific order of quests. But DhLegacy had a great story, and I loved the phasing that was used there, which phasing was used in all the zones. But for me, it was most noticeable in DhLegacy as the land, starts to heal itself as you go through all the quests. You see these scorched, burned, desolate areas start to turn green, and trees are growing there again. It's really cool. So you really feel the impact of what you're doing. A lot of people complained about the phasing because it makes it more difficult to go through with other people if you're in different phases. I say suck it up. I never group quest. I don't know why people group quest, but they do. And I can kind of see the whole thing. It is a social game. It is an MMO. But I don't know, I always quest by myself, and they're doing away with group quests entirely in the next expansion, so I see no reason to worry about it.
That's awesome. I hate the group quest concept. I do. When I first leveled Faranox, back post Frozen Throne, I avoided every group quest that I could. Mostly because I wasn't in a guild, I wasn't looking to join a guild for a good while, but there's too many. There's too many. And it's impossible to do them by yourself. It is, unless you're a hunter or a warlock. But it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad that they're doing away with that, because that is one of the biggest pet peeves that I've ever had with the game. Especially when we get someone new to the guild who says, hey, can you do this with me?
Yeah, people always, want to be carried through it.
Mm-hmm.
It's annoying.
Hey, you're level 85. Can you come kill this guy for me?
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're doing away with what.
Now, with the exception of the Crucible quests, I have to admit that those give out some decent gear, but I'm very glad to hear that they're never going to exist again.
Well, I mean,
that's what dungeons are for.
All of them give out better gear and more experience than a regular quest, but it's irrelevant, really, because the gear is changed in a level or two anyway. And, no matter how good it is, it's only ever going to be slightly better than what you normally get. It's not, amazing gear that you're going to use for 10 levels. That's ridiculous. And the experience that you get from it is, maybe double what you would get normally. And in most cases, you can do 2 normal quests in the amount of time that you take trying to find people to do a group quest. So, they're not worth doing unless you're a hunter or possibly a warlock. So they're doing away with that, which is a shitty social aspect of the game, and they're bringing back what is an awesome social aspect of the game, which is world raid bosses.
There you go.
So that's good. But again, we're going off topic.
Well, we're moving out of the we have things to talk about to let's talk about things we're looking forward to. I mean, we're far beyond our time limit for that we usually use to record a segment in the podcast, but we're having fun discussing it because this is our native game.
Yeah. There's still a couple things, though. Deep Home, again, had a really cool visual style. Probably Deep Home was my favorite visually out of the new zones, actually. It was really cool. Yeah. Especially the first time you go in there, you kind of go, wow. And you realize how much the textures in this game have improved over the past few years. They've come a long way for a 7-year-old engine. Uldum was cool. I love the Egyptian theme, but we've seen it before in Silithus and Teneris, so it's not really different from what we've seen in the past, but it's still a nice zone. It's pretty, it's fun to go through. I liked a lot of the quests in there. Harrison Jones is always a welcome character. Then Twilight Highlands was actually my favorite overall of all the zones because I like the story the most, at least from the Horde perspective. I love getting onto a Zeppelin in Ajara, flying over there, bombing the shit out of some dwarves, and then getting bombed or attacked by Deathwing's dragons, and you crash land, and you find yourself at Dragon Maw Port, and then you have to fight through all the nasty Dragon Maw, who you'll remember from Shadow Moon Valley if you've quested in there, especially if you've done the Netherwing quests. It was kind of interesting to see those guys again, and you end up bringing them into the Horde. And I love bringing in new races and new groups, new tribes into the Horde. I love bringing in the Tonka back in Wrath, and I love bringing in the Dragon Maw now. It's a lot of fun. And then you can go and kill dwarves with the Dragon Maw, which is awesome. So Twilight Highlands was great, and I thought it tied in well. The quest line tied in well with Bastion of Twilight, which was the first raid a lot of people did in the expansion. So, but overall, the questing across all of the zones I thought was boring and repetitive, but I also don't like questing, so I'm a bit biased. Is everybody still here?
Yeah, I'm distracted. I'm trying to do several things at once. This is why we didn't record last week, because I was building stuff in Minecraft, and I don't multitask well.
I really thought that the questing in Cataclysm was a lot more boring than Wrath was. I hated going through it the first time, and I hated going
I
through
hate
it the
questing
second
anyway,
time.
so.
Well, I do too. You guys know me. I don't really like.
You don't like anything that has to do with effort.
Oh, dude, that's not true. I did level 2 characters to level 85, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, the questing it was really boring, and I did not like leveling through it the first time. I didn't like leveling through it the second time. I always loved going back. So.
Regarding quests, and specifically Vashir, I only did Vashir for the gear. And only on a couple of tunes, because by that point, it doesn't matter. You don't even need it. You just get into heroics. It's kind of ridiculous.
For the gear.
Vashir for the gear. That should be a slogan. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really care for questing. I did the quests that I needed to do in regards to getting geared at the time. But any new tune that I were to level, I would probably go straight through dungeons. I mean, if I'm leveling a DPS with a gathering profession, I'll go do my gathering and just sit in the queue. Because I don't care. I just don't. And while some of that basic 359 gear is pretty nice, you could buy 378s now with Justice, so there's really no point to it.
Yeah. Of course, back then you pretty much had to if you weren't raiding regularly in order to get decent gear.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, quests. I don't think any of us in this guild like quests to begin with. We're not questers. Well, I kind of get the feeling that she just does it for the achievements. I don't think she actually enjoys doing it.
And I think that was the original concept of the Lore Master title, is for the people who actually do spend their time doing the quests for the lore.
Yeah,
but nobody really does that anymore.
There are some people that do love, like, they read through all the quest text and they savor every moment of it. Those people are rare and they're fucking weird. And they deserve their insane title and their lore master title. That's great, but that's not my bag.
Yeah.
And as far as the daily quests go, like I did mention before, I didn't like the Molten Front quests because it took so freaking long to get through and get the stuff that you were doing it for. And that is the model that they're going to use in MoP for daily quests. And that's fine. If you're going to do daily quests, honestly, that's the best model to go with. But please don't do daily quest hubs in lieu of more dungeons. Dungeons are way more fun to get new gear with than daily quests are. I would hate to see development resources put into dailies instead of dungeons. And I mean, granted, dungeons probably take more development time and more people to design than dailies do, but it felt like the dailies took the place of new dungeons in 4.2, and I don't want to see that happen.
Definitely not.
So I think that wraps up what Greg Street talked about. Now, the last one that we haven't looked up is the one on questing, which we've already talked about enough. We don't need to talk about that. What I think we should talk about is the dev water cooler on MoP stat changes. So now we can start maybe moving into MoP stuff and not Cataclysm stuff. Do we want to just say first what our overall impressions of the expansion are?
I liked Wrath better, but it was a very fun expansion for me. So.
Okay. Pharaoh?
Pandas. No, I am greatly looking forward to Mr. Pandaria. The areas look amazing. I am very much looking forward to my monk, who will be a Pandaren.
Oh,
if only to have played the class
Wait,
or the race.
I meant your impressions of Cataclysm.
Oh,
I
sorry.
thought you meant okay. Yeah, I am slightly distracted. I thought you meant we were moving on to actually lists. Cataclysm overall. Cataclysm overall. You know, at this point, I'm kind of just neutral with Cataclysm because there are a lot of things I can say are bad.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things I loved. But the major fact comes down to, like we said earlier, Cataclysm was the experiment expansion.
Yes.
They were trying to find out what worked for progression raiders, what worked for non-progression / casual raiders, what worked for people who don't even bother with raids or even don't even bother with dungeons. They're trying to figure out what works for everyone. And what came out of that was pet battles. But in all seriousness, you know, at this point, I really don't have anything to say about Cataclysm because I know why they did what they did. And the things that they did wrong, oh, trust me, they are reading the forums. I guarantee it. Anything that they think has even any substance, there are a lot of people working for Blizzard. They read their own forums. They read WoW Insider. They read any fan site that they believe has substance to it. I guarantee they probably even read elitist jerks.
Oh, yeah.
I think it would be absolutely hilarious if they redid the talents for Cataclysm just to screw with the theory crafters. That would be kind of funny to me. No, they look at this stuff. They want to know what we think. The Dungeons and Raid questionnaire post-mortem thing was really depressing for the community because it was so generalized. But, you know, Greg Street did what he did. He's the figurehead when it comes to reporting what the designers think.
Mm-hmm.
But I guarantee, no matter what you feel from the post-mortems for Cataclysm, they are listening. They are reading what we post. Maybe not all of it. Don't go out and throw your suggestion in there because I'm telling you that they're going to read it. I'm not saying that. But these threads that have 20,000 views and 10 pages of content, yeah, they probably saw that. One of the community managers probably said, hey, they got some pretty cool ideas going on in here, and they probably went and read that.
Yeah.
So they are listening. Cataclysm as a whole was, let's see what will work. Oh, well, we screwed up with the first set of dungeons because they took too long and they were too difficult. Oh, yeah, we did screw up with Dragon Soul because it was too easy. I guarantee somebody on the team thought that. But it also brought a lot more people to raiding. Some of these people will probably go into Mists of Pandaria with the intention to actually move up from Raid Finder to casual to hardcore.
I'll put it back 2 seconds, guys. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Vic. We don't care. Point being, what happened in Cataclysm is not going to stay in Cataclysm. They are going to improve on what worked, and they will probably throw out what didn't.
Oh, yeah. Their intention is not to piss people off. Their intention is to make money. So they're going to try to appease as many people as possible. It's just everybody has a different opinion, and there's a really varied audience for this game. And everybody...
With 10 million subscriptions, someone's going to get pissed off.
Exactly. So people really need to start thinking from the perspective of these developers. They're trying to appease a lot of people that all have different opinions about things, and you can't please everybody. That's just the reality. But you can please the majority and be happy with that. If you're in the minority, too bad.
But yeah, I mean, in general, Cataclysm was fun. I will say it, Cataclysm was fun. Due to our own issues as a guild, and things that we had to deal with the community, we didn't get to experience as much of it. But overall, had we been able to, we would have been having a time of our lives. And even with what we have experienced, we've had a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. My personal take on the expansion is it was definitely kind of a transitional expansion and an experimental one. But it was, like I said before, the 1 to 60 revamp is the main cause for lack of endgame content. And the expansion was a letdown for endgame players. There's no getting around that. But it had to be done because the game is 7 years old. And if they're going to keep bringing in new players and being relevant, they had to do that. And I'm glad they did it.
I think the only way they can prevent this from happening again is if they start working on, one of these days we're going to have to face the Burning Crusade again. They're going to have to revamp Outland or give us another Outland. I think the only advice if I were in a position to advise the designers of the game, I would say, hey, you guys, maybe some of those 600 people you just fired, or no, that's probably not what I'm thinking of. Some of those guys you got rid of should have been the developers for the content that's not going to come out for 2 expansions. Well, maybe they need to put a little bit of effort, and I'm not going to talk about the firings. I don't want to discuss that.
Okay.
You can bring it up in a minute if you want to. But maybe if I were in a position of advising them, I would say maybe you need to set aside a team or 2 to go ahead and work on this stuff ahead of time, long before it's needed. If they'd done that, one, we might have had the 1 to 60 revamp sooner, but they also would have had the team, the majority of the team, more able to give us better raid content. And maybe that's what they need to do in the future. Maybe they do need to have teams, okay, well, we're due with these features, you guys can finish it up, we'll go ahead and start on this. They may already be doing that. Maybe they need to do it a little bit better. But if I could say anything to the developers, that's what it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think they already do that to a certain extent. Maybe not 2 to 3 years ahead of time, but certainly they do spend a lot of time developing new expansions. But I wanted to say, as the firings go, the only thing that I was going to say is apparently the majority of people who lost their jobs were customer service people. And that was probably just because they don't need as many people because they lost some subscribers. But
I can understand that. I did hear the biggest outcry, and it's amazing this thread hasn't been locked, was that they fired the community manager for the lore section, apparently, which got a huge outcry from the community. And it's now, I want to say it's probably a 5 to 10 page thread by now in the general discussion forum. And like I say, it's amazing to me that it hasn't been locked yet. But there's been a lengthy discussion about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, it's business.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I thought overall the endgame content was kind of a letdown, but there were some great parts. I mean, like I say, the raids were good. The main issue that we had with not being able to see raid content was due to the server that we were on, probably mostly. It was a community issue. Because I think the raids were really, really good, and they were too difficult to pug at the beginning, definitely, but for a guild group, they were fine. I think that, like I said, the 1 to 60 revamp was needed, and now we sacrificed some of the endgame content that we would have had otherwise, but now we can move forward with MoP and have, again, a rich expansion with lots of endgame content like what we saw in Wrath and Burning Crusade. And we can move forward with this much better 1 to 60 experience, and probably more people will start playing the game because it's more relevant, it's refreshed, and it just keeps getting better overall.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to be very fun, I think.
So that's where the echo was coming from.
I'm back. No, I just got it.
And I think that at this point we should probably stop recording for today and talk about MoP in our next session.
Yes, because we have been recording for 2 hours.
And we have a raid in 1 hour, and I have to do a couple things before we start.
And I need to eat. My stomach is growling.
So let's cut it off here, and here we go.
Hello.
Hey everybody, we're doing part 2 of post-Nerf. What is this, episode 5 now?
Yes, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. And we are discussing Mists of Pandaria and what we're looking forward to. This week is the big press event for World of Warcraft Mists of Pandaria that Blizzard is holding.
And of course, we won't find out anything about it until next week because they have that silly non-disclosure agreement thing.
Indeed. Which is kind of a
Silly
good thing.
people.
It means that we'll get higher quality information because people will not be rushing to get it out first. But it's very exciting for us WoW nerds to know that we have this information coming out. So, yeah, we're basically just going to have a little bit of a roundtable discussion today on some of the things we're looking forward to in MoP, some of the things that we might be a little bit skeptical about. And yeah, so who wants to start? Any volunteers?
Well, what I'm looking forward to most in Mr. Pandaria is pet battles.
Yeah,
Really?
Not
just about to say,
surprised.
man, Pokemon, fantastic.
Well, the reason I'm doing that is just because it adds something new to the game. Unlike the normal stuff. Monks are just another class, so I mean, you can level them and whatnot. Pandaren are pretty cool too. But I mean, pet battles is just something new, something that you can actually use your companions for other than just looking cool. So I just think that's an awesome new aspect of the game.
Okay.
I
For
thought
me,
looking cool was the entire point of the game.
I wish.
Well, like Cilantro Gamer says, you can't look cool things to death.
oh, we should introduce everybody who's actually here for this segment. I'm Dragma. Faranox is here.
Oh,
Vec is here.
Woo! That's me, by the
And
way.
Fluffy is here, who's our head StarCraft nerd.
Hello
and of course we could have just avoided all of that and said, and for part 2, Fluffy Bin Laden has joined us today.
Indeed.
Yep.
But whatever. Okay, so with that out of the way, I'll just comment on what you just said, Vec. For me, pet battles, I don't really give a crap about pet battles. I don't really give a crap about companion pets as they exist right now. But it's nice that they're trying different things to try to get more people in this game. Even if they are probably going to be casuals in that case, but whatever. Maybe we can convert them.
You make raiders sound like a cult.
We are. There's no point in trying to deny it.
Oh, yes, indeed.
The Pandaren, most people that talk to me on a regular basis know that before BlizzCon, I was one of the people that went, "Oh, if this is really Mists of Pandaria, I'm going to stop playing," and that was just me raging. It turns out, when I saw more of the information at BlizzCon and saw some of the cinematics and some of the other stuff that they were going to bring besides Pandaren to the table, it actually looks really good. And they've released some screenshots of Pandaria over the past few days that look absolutely beautiful. Great architecture. Personally, I love Asian culture, right? It's just the panda part I thought was kind of stupid, but ultimately, you don't have to play a panda if you don't want to. so it doesn't really affect you that much. And people who are going on about the game becoming too childish because of Panda should probably look over to the gnomes and dwarves and Tauren that are running around already, because
come on, people. We have werewolves, cows, and munchkins.
Don't make fun of my gnomes. Don't make fun of them. Sure, you could bunt them across the entirety of Azeroth, but man, they're awesome. They're
I
fantastic.
particularly like to punt them into the Twisting Nether. That's always fun.
Man, that's cold.
Aren't Pandaren aren't they the alcohol and stuff?
Yeah.
Brewmasters,
They're
you mean.
Yeah,
alcoholics, basically.
Oh,
But again, aren't dwarves too, though?
Yes, they are.
Oh yeah,
Big time.
it is a commonly known fact that dwarven holy water is made from hops.
Beer!
And I mean, personally, I'm gonna try out a Pandaren. Just, I don't know, it'll be fun, change of pace. To be honest, the only races I really like in the game are orcs and goblins. I mean, the elves are just kind of bleh. Alliance races are all a joke. I don't like Tauren. I don't like trolls. So the monk is, for me, sorry, fuck's sakes. The monk, I meant the Pandaren, are just something different that I'll be trying out. And the monk class, since I mentioned it, I'm going to be rolling. I think that's going to be fun. Something different. So
I am very much looking forward to pandas.
I enjoy the idea of the monk class using a different style of a mana type thing, cause traditionally, I mean, everybody's always had the mana thing, and then WoW did the energy and the rage ideas, where, you know, you have a set amount of energy and that regenerates at a certain rate, or you've got the rage, which you generate by hitting things or getting hit. And I like.
I just
want
to point out real quick. Point out real quick. We have an oddity here. All of us are pretty hardcore into WoW, except for Fluffy here, and yet he was on the beta for vanilla.
I was.
So we have a bit of an oddity here.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I'm going to continue. But I like the idea that you've got a completely, or well, maybe not completely, but a very, very new system of a resource used to cast your abilities. Because from what I understand, it's a mixture of two different resources that you have to balance out to use certain abilities, and I assume that means that one resource is going to be used to cast a certain amount of abilities, and the other will be used to cast others, and then a mixture of the two will be used to cast a variety of others. So it's an interesting idea to see that there's a more involved sequence of actions you have to take just to use your basic spells.
well, I think,
And that's another reason I'm looking forward to the ponies. Is I'm a healer. I'm like a
ponies?
heals guy.
You mean
Oh
the
God!
pandas.
Did I really say that?
You did.
Oh god!
I think you did that on purpose.
I didn't do that on purpose. I'm looking at things. I just minimized it. The reason I'm looking forward to pandas is I'm the heals guy. I'm pretty sure that's my title in the guild, other than guildmaster.
Healers.
The healing for the monks is looking really interesting. It's, as far as I understand it, it is completely AoE based.
Huh.
And your heals, like, you're a melee healer flat out. Basically, you're using all of these abilities, and you're healing while you're, like, attacking. And it's all AoE based. And I'm greatly looking forward to seeing how that actually ends up working.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, is that we still don't actually know exactly how this is gonna pan out.
I'm just looking forward to playing as a tank.
Yeah, so the new race, the new class are nice. The new talents are a source of a lot of controversy. Some people love them, some people hate them.
I think it's too soon to tell.
It is
Yeah,
too soon to tell.
I'm hoping there are significant changes during the beta.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned in one of our previous podcasts that my view basically is that they're going in the right direction, but they definitely still have some work to do to get it right. And considering we do have the whole beta ahead of us, they've got plenty of time to do that, and receive a lot of feedback from the players, and I'm sure it'll turn out great.
Yeah, and that's the lovely thing. I'm very, very much looking forward to the beta.
Yeah, that's one thing Blizzard's always done right, is that they get the
just-
feedback before they release it.
Yeah, I'm just really hoping that, just really hoping they change some of the talents, because personally, I'm still like extremely frustrated about the priest talents. Although I did look at it again recently, and it was decent. It was decent. I hadn't looked at it since Dragma went over it with me after BlizzCon, but I don't know. It's still fairly iffy. I still don't like the entire first tier. I really wish they would put something actually healing involved in the first tier. But we do have to consider that almost every ability we have now, if it hasn't been turned into a talent, it's something that we're getting for free with our specialization as we level.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I mean by the talents going in the right direction. They've made it so that, it's impossible to fuck up your talents.
Yeah.
And some people would disagree with me on that. Some people would say that it simplifies the game too much. But is it really a good thing to have people in dungeons or raids, like say you're a marksmanship hunter and you don't take Chimera shot? Is that a good thing? No, it's not a good thing. It's better if people are coming more or less doing the right thing, and your talent choices more cater towards your play style than whether or not you can actually play or not. And I like that.
And that's exactly what it is right now. If you don't take the right talents, you cannot perform what you're trying to perform. And like Dragon was saying, that's the good thing about this, is that there is more choice to what you actually take now, and it's fluid. We can change at any point in time.
Really now? That's nice.
Just like glyphs, yeah, which is really nice. And I mean, with the current system, besides the fact that, you're either making the right choices or you're making the wrong choices, which means people that make the wrong choices are not viable in whatever role they're trying to fill. That same fact, the fact that there's either a wrong choice or a right choice, is really, really boring for those of us who do try to make the right choice. You're just looking up your cookie cutter spec on Elitist Jerks or whatever website you might use and plug it in, and you're not making any meaningful choices. None of the choices that you make affect the way you play, and that's not the intended design. So that's why they're making these changes.
I definitely like that. I like the whole air of more customization instead of optimization. And that's something that's kind of plagued WoW for a while, in my opinion. In my opinion only, mind you, because I'm terrible and I don't play the game, but that's something I like, because it makes things less cookie cutter. It gives people their own style, if you will. And that's something I like about the whole battle pets thing, is it gives people something else to do besides fighting other people or fighting in raids or in dungeons. That's something I kind of miss from games like EverQuest 2, in which you could go the entire game pretty much without fighting a thing, and you could just sit in like a workshop and craft tables and level up that way. It gives it a different way to play the game, and it doesn't necessarily force you to go down any one road. That's something I really like about these changes. Even if it's not to the extent of EverQuest 2, it's still really nice to see them branching out instead of just saying here's a new raid, go for it.
Which is
Although we'd be
ultimately all
very
I wanna
happy if
hear.
they went and said, "Here's a new raid, go for it."
Well, yeah, but that's because you guys are that type of player. But like,
Yeah, exactly.
I know some guy who went through EverQuest 2 without fighting anything, and he just crafted furniture and sold it on the market. It was really interesting.
There are some people who kind of do that in WoW now. They'll craft BOEs and stuff and sell them on the auction house. I personally don't understand what the allure is of making gold if you're not spending it on things to use in raids, but to each his own. I mean,
and to be honest, that's the only reason you have to spend it unless you're buying mounts and pets.
Yeah,
I mean,
It's not like they have decent BOE PvP gear out there that can be made.
my personal outlook on the game is, provided you're not a PvPer, everything revolves around raids. Better mounts are a cosmetic thing, but mounts are in the game to make it quicker to travel between raids.
yeah.
Items are there to make it easier to kill raid bosses. Whether you're crafting them or getting them from quests or whatever it is that you're doing, you level up in order to do raids.
And the funny thing about this rant is almost all of the items involved in this aren't usable in PvP.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, PvP is a different ball of wax. Some people only play the game to PvP, and that's fine. That's cool. But for me, it's just a distraction from raiding, the PvP part. It does feel to me, and I don't think I'm really off base here saying that this game was originally designed and is continued to be designed with raids as the premier endgame content. I mean, that's what you're working towards. That's what is always the climax of a given storyline. Everything else is just filler content, and that's why it amazes me that people don't raid. And that's why Blizzard makes so many changes to try to get people to raid, because they put so many development resources into raids, and then only a small fraction of the players in the game actually do raids.
Yeah, I think the main matter for that is, and it's almost off topic, but that's just kind of the going trend for multiplayer games now. If it has a multiplayer mode, no one cares about the storyline. Now, granted, there is a large population of WoW players that put a lot of effort into the storyline and figuring it out. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't put anywhere near as much effort as some of the people on the WoW forums would. But we have lore forums specifically for these people.
Yeah, and that's...
In the end, though, they're the minority. Because there are these people who they don't care about the story. They just want to do the multiplayer. They want to either do the raid because their guild is doing it and they have fun doing it, or they want to PvP so that they can show their EP off.
Well, another reason that people don't always do the raid thing is when Blizzard designed this game, they didn't design it necessarily to be a straight shot like most games. They designed it to be a universe, and that's the biggest thing that I have against WoW, is that it's very, very rigid. There's really only two paths you can go down at all. You can raid, which gets you to most of the endgame content and passes you down the story, or you could PvP. And a lot of people like the whole competitive aspect of that because, they're insecure or whatever, but...
That's gonna go down.
I want to win!
Yeah, but it's...
if I hadn't said EP, that probably wouldn't have come up.
No, it wouldn't have. But yeah, that's something I like about the new pet battling system. Is it gives people something else to do. But the idea in a universe is that there's not just one role that you can fill. You could be you could be a champion of your race or of your faction, the Horde or the Alliance, or you...
I still say that the best MMO in existence would be one where the beta players start up, build 2 or 3 kingdoms, and then that kingdom building process still exists in the released game,
Mm-hmm.
and you can actually venture off and create. I mean, the closest thing we have to that right now is Minecraft,
Basically.
but I think that would be a really awesome thing. And yeah.
Definitely. The issue with
WoW has changed a lot recently to kind of try to appeal to the people who don't want to raid or PvP. Like you said, with the guy who leveled up just doing professions. I mean, it's a little bit less in WoW, but you get experience while you go out. Whenever you go out and pick up an herb or pick up some materials from a mining, you actually get experience per node that you harvest. Not to mention you get experience for everything you kill while you're trying to do skinning. So you could literally level from 1 to 85 just mining, gathering, and skinning.
Yeah.
That would take
forever.
Yeah, but
it's
the idea is
possible.
that it gives an alternate route to the end, even if that end isn't necessarily the same, or some people don't think that end is worthwhile. It is an MMORPG.
Yeah.
So it's not. And the idea was that it's not going to be a straight shot, like no, I failed at that sentence. Again, it was meant to be a universe, and like I said, in a universe there's more than one role you can fill. So, some people really don't want to log on every day and kill everything. That's just not their style.
Kill.
Yeah, well, I know you've got like some weird bloodlust fetish, but
it just ultimately comes down to it's a huge game. It has taken years to develop, and it's still not done yet. It evolves constantly over time. And they've definitely changed some of their design goals over the past 7 years. And I think that ultimately it's become a lot better game. And will continue to become a better game. So, I think that's something we can all agree on.
Yes.
Because, I mean, in vanilla, the amount of grinding that was required just to level, never mind in the end game to be able to get into Molten Core.
The attunement quest lines, very glad we got rid of those.
And little things like spell resistances, which they're finally completely getting rid of in MoP. It used to be, if you didn't have a certain amount of fire resistance in Molten Core, you couldn't do it. It used to be...
And in Wrath of the Lich King, you had to stack frost resistance for one boss!
Yeah.
One boss! You had to have a completely separate set of gear for one boss!
And, like, a fire mage wouldn't be viable in Molten Core because their damage was fire damage, and the mobs resisted fire damage because they were fire-based. And that is not good design, so it's a good thing. And, that's just a couple of examples of where the game has greatly improved. So, yeah. How was I going to say, though? I don't know. That was a big
That's
tangent.
a good question. But yeah, as far as pet battles go, yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be something else that people can do. And you don't have to be max level to do it. It's just going to be something else for the casual players to do instead of raid or PvP. And that is fine.
By the way,
fine.
Just for anybody listening, I'm not one of those guys who's going to start up a little noob character and level up pets. That's not my thing. I am a raider.
I think I will just... I don't know. I mean, I'm really intrigued by this pet battle.
Well, actually, you know what? I might be leveling my mini Thor.
Low Ragnaros.
I am going to be leveling... I don't know. I have a lot that I have to decide between. But,
another thing to consider, though, is with the pet battles, we're going to have the elemental specialization, I hear. This is going to be interesting.
It'll be just like Pokemon. It'll be Pandokamon.
I think it would be absolutely hilarious to level my Low Ragnaros with a water specialization. That'd be
Awesome.
hilarious.
No, I think I'm gonna be a competitive pet battle player. I think that's what my goal is.
Yeah,
gonna
I
be in
don't
this
think
event.
they're
Oh
have
god,
tournaments for
Pet
that.
Battles becomes an esport.
No. If I can't have D3 as an esport, we cannot have pet battles as an esport. Dear
Oh
God.
gosh. But yeah.
I think I'm gonna catch them all.
Alright, I'm
Gosh.
starting the Kespa for Pokemon.
So we've gone on that tangent now. Indeed.
I also like how
And the entire podcast breaks down.
I also like how in Mr. Pandaya that they're actually gonna bring you out into the world more with more world PvP.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's real nice.
Yes, World PvP is potentially going to be revived.
But it's gonna suck on this server.
on Mugthal.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's a number of servers. Mugthal is far from the only one where
Yeah.
they really need to offer free faction changes to people
Mm-hmm.
because
There are a lot of dead
it's
servers
ridiculous.
out there that actually need a merger, even.
Yeah. Mugthal
I'll be right back.
is like 1 to 17 alliance to horde. There's like no alliance on this server. And like I say, there's a lot of servers that are like that. There's some that are even worse. So something needs to be done about that.
It's kind of saddening. I'd love to see some more alliance representation. The only reason I'm horde is because you guys are, and I wouldn't have anybody to play with. In fact, you guys would probably come gank me. So
I would gank you a lot.
I know you would. I know you would.
Well, like I mentioned before, Alliance to me is a joke. The whole concept of Alliance is a joke. Their races are all jokes. I don't like Alliance. But other people should play Alliance so that I can kill them.
Yeah, your reasoning is sound.
Well, I don't expect everybody to have the same taste that I do. So...
And I appreciate that.
But
If I was held up to your expectations, man, I don't know where I'd be.
like
No.
there's servers that are overpopulated Alliance and have next to no hordes. Sargeras is a really good example of such a server, which is
And that's one thing. I mean, consider that WoW does have 10 million players. Granted,
Mhm.
that's broken up into several different regions. I've seen more than one message on the general discussion forum saying, "Hey, this server is dead. Come on, let's get a merger happening here. Let's merge a few servers." It is potentially truthful that Blizzard actually has too many servers active right now.
Mm-hmm.
They have leftover servers from the bang at the end of Wrath, or the boom rather. The bang, Jesus Christ, the boom at the end of Wrath.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah, like Blackwing Lair, my oldest server, my first server, is dead, completely dead, which is sad.
Anybody know how Gorfiend's doing?
I don't actually.
What?
Gorfiend.
Orphiend? No idea.
Okay,
find
well,
out.
you're all very helpful. I appreciate that.
Nobody cares about Gorefiend.
Isn't that
Ouch,
the
man.
server your dad plays?
Yep, that was my first server. Back in Der Beta, the servers didn't exist in that way. But as soon as the game came out, man, I was on Gorfiend.
So yeah, the world PvP is good. World raid bosses are really exciting to me.
Okay, Gorefiend is actually to the point of not being included in this discussion because it's got about 8,000 characters, not the highest, but it is moderately balanced for Horde and Alliance. It is actually 1 to 0.99.
Nice.
Horde
That's
over
really
Alliance.
good.
And that is why I played on Gorfiend. Because I got ganked a moderate amount, but not too much.
It is ranked 57 in the US too.
Oh wow, that's
I don't know if that's good or bad, but
that is really.
I don't either.
Oh.
We're ranked 25 on Mugfall,
Yeah.
so
No heroic madness achievements.
Well, Ken didn't have any heroic achievements when we left. So.
Yeah, their highest guild is 7 out of 8 heroic, which isn't bad at all. I mean, none of the top 20 guilds are lower than 1 out of 8 heroic.
I think there's only 3 guilds on Mugthal that are 8 out of 8 on heroic. On the Horde side, I don't know what's going on the Alliance side, if anything.
Probably nothing.
Probably nothing.
But yeah,
although they have somehow managed to win Tolbarad like 3 days in a row.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's freaking awesome.
Well, they have become
Alliance buddies
skilled
represent.
at PvP because they have to be in order to survive.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there's not really anybody. There's not a lot of people on the Horde side that care about PvP. This is really a raiding server, what I've seen at least. So not very many people do TB. When I did it, it was only a 10-man, and on Cairn they were like 40-mans. They were full. But
yeah,
I miss me my 40-man PvPs.
Oh yeah, I mean even on Cairn, what we have like.
We had full groups, and
we had like 5,000, 5 to 6,000.
Yeah.
And yeah, we ended up with like 60 player raids on both sides.
Yeah, there were like carryovers to different groups and everything, and it was crazy.
That's something I miss, man. That was
pretty
freaking
terrible
awesome.
players, but at least there were a lot of them.
Yeah.
True that.
It helped us win some of the time.
Some of the time.
Horde actually kept TB most of the time on Cairn, which is funny because there's a lot more Alliance players on that server than Horde. I think
that tells you how awesome the Horde is.
Well, when I started playing again, it was always the Alliance, and we got lucky if we had it. But then, once it started to progress through Cataclysm, we've started to be winning it.
So, quick noob question. What are the benefits of holding a world PvP zone? Because I actually wasn't around for most of them. Oh, okay.
The raid. In Wrath of the Lich King, they introduced Winter Grasp, and in Winter Grasp, you had...
Vault of Archivon.
What was it? Vault of Archivon. And that's where the whole concept started, is if you own the world raid zone, you own the raid, and you can go there up to about 15 minutes before the battle starts again.
And the other side and it dropped PvP
and the other side can't. Yeah.
It dropped really good PvP gear, and then
PvP gear and PvE gear.
Yeah, tier gloves.
I find it very interesting that now we've reintroduced the tokens in Dragon Soul, and yet we're still giving away the actual tier pieces in Baradin Hold.
Yeah.
Do it back one more time.
I didn't like Tolbarad, actually. I liked Winter Grasp Grade. Now that we're on the subject, but
I liked Tolbarad. I didn't like Baradin Hold. I thought Tolbarad and its quests were fun, but the raid was lame.
I did not like the PvP stuff. I thought Winter Grasp was a lot better with the with the actual machine mechanics or whatever.
Yeah,
we
the
had to like go
and everything.
Destroy the towers or destroy the walls.
Oh yeah,
It was
Winter Grasp was amazing. Winter Grasp was awesome. I mean, the concept of no, you don't have to go and slaughter your way through all these enemies. You can literally get in vehicles, and you have to go and besiege this fortress in order to win the combat.
Yeah, that's something I think WoW is really improving on, is like the different aspects of a battle, not just
that's
a whole bunch of foot
problem is they
soldiers beating the
dropped
crap out
that
of
this
each other.
expansion.
Yeah, admittedly they're still screwing some stuff up, but that's completely fine. You know, they've got other things on their plate at the moment. They're working on who knows how many games. I don't know, like at the moment it's 4, I think. They've got D3, StarCraft 2, Heart of the Swarm, the next WoW, and then people are actually developing Titan. But yeah, so it's understandable that they...
As I hear it, is going to be an MMO version of Borderlands and has no interest whatsoever to me.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to actually be something I'm interested in either, but it's... Even so, they are kind of spreading their resources around, so they do have other things on their plate, is my point. But yeah, that's something WoW is really improving on, is the different aspects of a battle in PvP. There's not just foot soldiers on the ground, there's people running people down in tanks.
And that's a lovely thing. What I would love to see come back into WoW, somebody brought up on the forums recently that WoW has lost the Warcraft version of World of Warcraft. There is no, I mean, it went from an RTS to an MMO, and granted, World of Warcraft is an MMO. It is not the RTS that it was. But there is an interesting concept out there called PlanetSide, where you are FPSing your way through an encounter while people in EVE Online, or something similar, are actually fighting over this planet that you're fighting on in an RTS style. I think it would be really cool if they did find a way to reincorporate RTS into WoW.
Yeah, there's definitely really cool things out there. And recently we're seeing a lot of genre crossovers. PlanetSide is one example. There was what was it called?
There was one thing I showed you guys about an FPS RTS type thing.
I don't think that's going anywhere, to be honest.
But
there was one crossover that was an RTS FPS MOBA crossover, like all three of them, and it was extremely cool. Not the most popular game, of course, but the point is that we are seeing a lot more crossovers, and they're getting more popular, and I think that is gonna be one of the future game types, because I mean, there's something fun about commanding an army, and then there's something fun about, commanding one person and beating the crap out of an army.
Yeah.
Some really neat stuff.
I just want to say, I mean, we came into this saying we were going to talk about Mist of Pandaria. There's really not much that we know of to talk about
Yeah,
yet.
Not until the press release.
I mean, the beta hasn't started. We're not going to know anything about anything until a week after the press event.
We know about what the hell does that sound? We know about a few things though. Like I wanted to say, I'm really excited about the world raid bosses, because that's a feature that existed in vanilla that they took out, I think, in Wrath.
They had it in BC, so
yeah, and it was, I think, a really cool concept.
There are a few out there. There are a few out there for Cataclysm now. I mean, if nothing else, the most popular one is the whale shark.
Yeah, I guess there is
which we had a shaman in the guild at one point who promised us that he soloed it.
The thing about the whale shark is it's always there. Like the world raid bosses they used to have were rare spawns that would drop really good gear.
But we do have a couple of that like that now still.
Like
I just don't remember what their names are. I can't remember them off the top of my head. There's was one that spawns in Twilight Highlands.
Yeah, because we Alliance and Void were racing that.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, I do remember that. But there's going to be more.
And that might have been their experiment to getting that started again.
Yeah.
There's another one in Vashir, actually, I believe. It's another different kind of shark.
They are great, especially on PvP servers. They get really hectic on PvP servers with each faction trying to kill each other in order to get access to it. Trying to sabotage the other faction's kill. And that's fantastic. And I think it'll be great on this server. We should be able to, at first, get a pretty easy kill as Horde, because there's not much competition.
Oh, yeah. It'll be very quick. But yeah, they definitely need to merge some of the servers.
Yeah. And I think for me personally, other than obviously being excited for the new raid content, which I'm always excited for looking ahead, the new continent, along with the new art style and all of the new storylines that come with that is exciting. It's going to be refreshing because Cataclysm got stale really fast. It was cool to see the world changed, and everything looks a lot better, I think, than it did. There's a couple exceptions to that where I miss the old version, but we talked before about how the 80 to 85 zones in Cataclysm felt really disjointed, and now we go back to the unified continent style of endgame questing, which I'm really excited for. I just really liked, in general, the way Wrath was done, and it seems like, based on what we're seeing, we're going to see more of that kind of design philosophy in Mists with, some added new things based on lessons that they've learned since Wrath. So it's great.
I'm very much now. That's the next question. What are we hoping for? I'm very much hoping for a return to tier 11 with multiple raid, in game.
We will
multiple
see
raid
that
tiers because Firelands and no, it's ridiculous. I prefer 12 bosses out of 3 different raids than 8 bosses out of 1.
I can tell you just based on what they said at BlizzCon that there will be at least 2 raids at launch, probably 3. I think they actually said 3 at launch for the first tier, which they kind of always do. I mean, in BC they had Karazhan, Gruul's Lair, Megtheridon's Lair. In Wrath they had Obsidian Sanctum, Eye of Eternity, and Naxxramas.
Obsidian Sanctum and Eye of Eternity were 1 boss. Granted, Naxxramas was a lot, but...
Megtheridon's Lair was also only 1 boss, and Gruul's was 2 bosses. But Karazhan was like 14, or maybe even more. So in both cases they balanced out. And then in Cataclysm we had Bastion of Twilight, which was 4, Blackwing Descent, which was 6, and Throne of the Four Winds, which was 2. Overall, we had a lot fewer encounters than we've had to start in past expansions. We did not even have as many encounters out of those 3 as we had just in Nax and Wrath.
This is true.
So yeah, I would like to see longer raids too. Not necessarily to start, because there's multiple raids at the beginning, but then when they patch new raids in, I want to see more 12 boss raids. I don't like 7 bosses, 8 bosses. I mean, it's okay.
You want to see single 12 boss raids? I would like to see. If all I want to see is more than 1 raid per tier. I don't like the whole, and I don't think it would be too hard to tie a storyline into 2 separate locations.
I don't know how I feel on that.
Don't really care as long as there's like enough bosses to hold you over. Like World War was a lot of bosses and really fun. ICC was a lot of bosses and really fun. So I mean, that really doesn't matter to me as long as there's a lot of bosses just hold you over until the next raid.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, it does admittedly make things more difficult for our guild because it's a small guild and it's hard enough for us to progress through smaller raids because we don't have a lot of people. But I always, I still want to see things the way I would want if we were in a big guild with lots of people.
Yeah.
But yeah. What was I gonna say? I don't know.
Yeah, so new and bigger raids. It's definitely a hope. Now,
I just went brain dead, and I have nothing to add.
Total nerd. I'm one of those lore geeks that you guys were talking about, and it's actually really cool. I mean, there's neat stuff that you can find out in any game, especially at Blizzard's, because they're very, very, very in depth about it, which is why I like it so much. But what I'm hoping is that, like with Cataclysm, how the entire world changed. You know, that was one of the big pulls of Cataclysm, is that, hey, everything's destroyed now that this giant dragon just flew through and crashed into everything. So what I'm hoping is that with Mists of Pandaria, especially since it's the bringing of the European fantasy style into the more Oriental ideas and fantasy things, I hope that Asian culture is integrated within different bits of the entire world and not in just Pandaria, because it is a very colonial type deal where the European powers, the Alliance and the Horde, are really colonizing and fighting over the resources of this new territory that they've found. So there's a lot of parallels you could draw. But when things like this happen in real life, these powers kind of take what they want from these different cultures and they integrate it with their own societies to make them better. So I'm hoping we'll be able to see hints of that, because that'd be really neat, seeing a very, very, very Asian architectural structure sitting in the middle of Orgrimmar or something. That'd be neat.
It would. Based on what we've seen in past expansions, I don't expect it, but it would be nice to be surprised.
Well, the reason I'm hoping for that specifically is that their ideas of the world changing are much more liberal than they were. They're not just introducing new zones anymore. They're changing old zones. So
that is true, and the biggest thing is they have way more development power and way better tech and way better tools than they did before. I think that the biggest reason why things were so stale for such a long time is because they just didn't have the means to do it the way they really wanted to.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I'm not thinking we're gonna see much as far as I see more there being Horde and Alliance European style bases in Pandaria than Pandaria coming out, because as far as I can understand it, Pandaria is kind of like feudal Japan, where they literally cut themselves off from anything, and like unlike Pandaria, Japan literally, sunk ships.
Yeah.
In order to keep them from even coming in. So I don't expect to see much Pandarian influence on. Now, let alone, I don't think they're redoing any of the old world or any of the other zones for this expansion.
Well, I think
I don't see it happening for another expansion, probably. So they've had time to plan it and do something with it.
That would be interesting, because they still do have to rebuild the world. They still have to rebuild Orgrimmar and Storm.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You are still dealing with the devastation.
If they do rebuild it with the new architect that we find in Pandaria, that would be pretty interesting, and that's a big possibility.
And there is a difference between feudal Japan and Pandaria, if only on one level. Obviously, you're able to play as a panda, so that's extremely important in this context, because these Pandarans are allying themselves with both factions. Japan was just kind of sitting there neutral, hating everybody. That's why their culture didn't really get out. But
but in the end, when they did open their doors, they kind of incorporated everything they could. The thing with Pandaria, the major difference is it's not like they were forcing people out that would, via the basic mechanics of the zone, that alone would create Sha, which they would then have to combat. No, they're cut off by a natural force that is the mist around Pandaria. You literally cannot find your way to Pandaria unless you're guided. Kind of like Avalon in the Arthurian legend.
Yeah. Well, again, I say the difference is that these Pandarans are going out to fight with these factions. Then they're not just staying in Pandaria. Admittedly, that is where the endgame content is. So at the end, they will be, but I don't think that they're going to be there from the start until the end. So they are going to be traveling around Azeroth and elsewhere. And they, in my opinion, they would, or in my, it's not important, but I would think they would, bring cultural aspects of their society with them around the world. Especially considering the recent destruction of Azeroth with Deathwing. Like Vex says, they're rebuilding from Deathwing, so why not integrate the cultural influences of Pandaria?
Yeah, I don't know how much Garrosh would allow their influence to affect the architecture and order.
I think
But-
we're more likely to see it in Stormwind than Orgrimmar, probably, except maybe just some kind of setup with tents, probably in the Orc or the Troll area. But I could see Stormwind a little bit doing it, just because the Alliance is typically known to be more tolerating, and
they're the
it's
Canada
Garrosh.
of Azeroth.
The Canada of Azeroth. We have even more reason to insult Alliance players now.
No, they're not Canada. The Blood Elves are the Canada of Azeroth.
I don't think I like.
I don't think I care.
Alliance being the Canada of Azeroth.
I think I'm gonna kill you in your sleep.
Oh gosh. Okay. Lovely. So we're threatening each other now. I think we're having a successful podcast again.
Leave or something.
But yeah, it's more likely that they'll be allowed into the city, but not so much allowed to build very much in the city.
It'd just be
and
nice
in
to see them
And in
populating
fact,
the world.
there's little to no repairs in most of the Horde zones. The major impact of the Horde zones was, a couple of mountains being destroyed in burning land and blasted lands.
Crossroads.
The Thousand Needles being flooded.
Crossroads was cut in half. I mean,
Crossroads? You mean the Barrens?
Barrens, yes.
Yeah. Why did I?
And the
Because that
Alliance.
was the area
No,
was
Crossroads
southern
is
half.
intact. You're a
basically.
genius.
Yeah.
I would like to see some of the earlier villages and such expanded. That would be cool. But again, not likely to happen for another expansion probably, because right now they're putting all of their development resources in Pandaria itself. I'm thinking though the next expansion will probably see a redux of Outland before anything else. Because I'm looking forward to the final confrontation with Sargeras or Cerberus or however you pronounce that.
They've said that revamping either Outland or Northrend are very, very low on their priority lists, so I don't know if I would even expect the expansion after.
Yeah, even story-wise, it doesn't make too much sense, because Outlands is still kind of
Outlands is still a major staging point for the Burning Crusade. So if we were going to make that our stand against Sargeras, then that would be the place to do it. And all it would really take is a little bit of upkeep and rebuilding on some of the major camps and such, and maybe another zone.
A lot of it, I think,
But
depends.
when it comes down to that expansion, we're gonna I want to say we're gonna either see a redux of Outland or a completely new Outland-esque zone.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I think they're gonna go the way of a new zone, just because you guys were mentioning in podcast 3, I think it was, that you guys thought that you were going to be exploring the dark side of Azeroth. And to tell you the truth, I think we're gonna start venturing out there, just because.
That's what Pandaria is.
Well, yeah, but there's more out there. It's not going to cover a hemisphere. I can guarantee that, because they want the room to build. So it'll be nice to see something new and to figure out what they come up with.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Sargeras goes, he kind of makes the most sense to me as the final boss of the entire game, and they'll probably save him until the end. So I think that'll depend on subscriber numbers, sort of.
Well, we've still got the old gods, because the old gods are the first enemy Azeroth ever saw. Then came Sargeras.
Yeah, but Sargeras
Titans, yeah.
Yeah, he's the Dark Titan. He's like the ultimate power, or at least that's how I see it when it comes to evil. I think that probably the old gods will be dealt with before him, but that's just my guess. And I hope that it comes to that, because personally I love the character and I'd love to be able to fight him.
Oh, I guarantee that we will eventually kill Sargeras. I'm waiting for the day when we actually have legitimate contact with the Titans. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and that I would bet would be the same expansion that we kill him. We'll probably need their help for that. But
the inter expansion launch event for that expansion will probably be us finding the Titans.
Yeah. But in terms of Mist's story, one thing that I wanted to say was I appreciate that they're focusing more on the Alliance Horde conflict. I think that's great, but I do hope that there's going to be a very clear final boss that we fight, which should be an old god, in my opinion. I hope we see that, because you get all these hints of old gods like Unzoth that we haven't fought yet. And I think that these Shaw enemies that we keep hearing about probably have something to do with one of the old gods. And I hope that that's the case, because that would just make sense.
That would be a really, really, really nice intro to a transition with more contact with these greater powers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what would be awesome for me is if they kind of kept everything under wraps for most of the expansion, and you just kind of slowly discover more and more clues that lead towards this being an old god, and then at the end you kill the old god, and then that ties into the next thing.
I'm thinking we're gonna see, you know, like a Pandaren faction that doesn't like the Horde and Alliance coming in as the first raid tier, and then probably, I don't remember the name of it, but they have a neighboring insectoid race that will that's very, very much like the Yankaraj Silithus stuff. That we'll probably see in the next tier, and then the third tier, and whatever's left after that, if there is any more after a third tier, which is probably unlikely, will probably be, you know, the reveal of the final boss.
The first tier, they actually said at BlizzCon, they revealed one of the enemies that you'd see in the raids, which is the insectoid dudes. The guides, they look kind of like praying mantis, and I forget what they're called. But those are supposed to be enemies featured in one of the instances in the first tier. We don't know the other two yet. There's also those pig-looking things, the Mogu, I think they're called. Those are supposed to be in 5-mans. I don't know if we'll see them in raids or not. And the Shaw are also in 5-mans, and pretty much guaranteed, I would say, will also be in raids. Because they've been... The Mogu and the Mantids, or whatever it is that they're called, have been painted as kind of hostile factions like the Naga, but not really dangerous, nasty things, which is what the Shaw are kind of like. The Shaw are more akin to the Scourge, it seems like, based on what I've seen, whereas the Mantids and the Mogu are more like the Naga and the... It's another example, like the Murlocs.
I don't think Murlocs are quite as big a threat.
No, but you know what I mean.
I think they're gonna give Hogger like magical powers. And
I really hope that the expansion after this one is the Murloc expansion.
It is the Mantids, by the way.
Okay.
Something I just realized is that in this expansion, this is all completely new stuff except for the race. Literally, there is almost zero story time back to anything before. Warcraft RTS series or not. Because it
just occurred to me, would it not be awesome if, what's his name, Stout something? I forget his name. If that character...
Yes.
10 Stout whatever. I forget his family name.
Chen Stormstout.
Yes.
There you go.
Stormstout. There we go. If Chen Stormstout was on the Wandering Isle.
That would be fantastic.
He probably will be.
I hope so.
Probably will.
Yeah,
that would be amazing.
That's
that, or he's going to be one of the monk trainers.
He'll be featured in the expansion in some way, I guarantee it. Whether it's at the beginning Pandaren starting area or whether he ends up being a faction leader or something, he'll be in there. Or not a faction leader, a race leader. He'll be in there. I think it would be awesome if he was like a race leader or like some sort of major figure in the Pandaren military, if you can call it that, you know, comes into dungeons and raids and helps us out, kind of like we've seen Sylvanas do in the past and Thrall do a lot. That would be cool.
It's definitely going to be a really interesting thing to see how they incorporate the higher levels of the Pandaren society, because at the moment they're probably going to be neutral, obviously, but the fact that they're pretty much selling all of their lower level warriors off to each side is interesting to say the least. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting to see how the higher level Pandarens interact with the rest of the world, even if they're just the neutral zone like Dalaran or what have you. I don't even know. It's going to be interesting.
I think it will be.
Yeah, the Pandaren associated towns, I'm pretty sure, are going to be sanctuaries, just like Dalaran.
Oh yeah, definitely.
See, but the real question for me is that, especially since it's their territories that are being fought over in this massive war, how are they going to be reacting to that? Are they... obviously, or maybe semi-obviously, there's going to be a faction of Pandarens that don't like these hostile invaders, like you were saying with the first tier of the raids. But it's going to be interesting to see how these more peaceful Pandarens interact with the Horde and Alliance members.
And that is the thing. I mean, they are a purely peaceful race. They had no other choice, otherwise the Shah shows up and starts killing them.
Yeah.
So, how are they going to react to this? How are they going to react to invaders? All of a sudden there's these new warlike people coming into their home. And not only do they have to deal with their old enemies, the Mogu and the Mantids, but they have to deal with these two fighting over each other and creating the Shah, which they haven't seen in probably eons.
Well, one thing I think could happen is the Pandaren could give away some of their territory to the Alliance and the Horde, and then the Alliance would just fight over that territory that they were given.
I'm fairly certain that there will be Alliance and Horde zones in Pandaria.
There will be.
I don't know that they're going to be entire, oh, here, you get, the Barrens, and you get Storm, or not Stormwind, but Dark Shore or something. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be entire zones, but there will definitely be zones within the actual zones.
Well, yeah,
I'm kind of fail at describing these things. I don't know what the words for them are. No, not Zoneception.
All of the zones themselves will be contested, just like in Northrend and Outland, but you'll have Horde and Alliance towns. But you'll be able to gank people in those towns because it's a contested zone. The only places where you'll be safe are the sanctuaries, which will probably be the Pandaren towns.
Or even just the Pandaren capital.
Yeah, there might even only be just the one hub city that is the sanctuary, and everywhere else is a no man's land. That's probably actually more likely. Or not a no man's land, a contested area where you can be killed.
It's going to be really interesting to see that, and especially with the point you bring up about Pandarens perhaps only having the one capital city, because we don't actually know how they interact with their land, if they own it, or if they're...
I'm sure they have villages. I'm sure they have villages.
Of course they have villages, but do they actually own the area, or are they more like the Cenarian expedition, or whatever that stupid thing is called? By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I play a druid, but that's not important. No, but it's going to be interesting to see how they react, or not react, but how they interact with their own zone, because we don't know how they run things either. It's going to be real neat.
This is true. This is true.
We definitely know that there's going to be big, beautiful temples.
Oh yeah,
Which is
it's going to
awesome.
be real nice.
That'll probably be like farmlands, like rice paddies and stuff, which is also cool. Oh,
I really
is gonna
hope.
have a field day.
Antheus is gonna. Oh,
I really hope there's like one area at least that's got like you know how some places will like terrace hills and they'll plant their crops on those terraces. I really hope that there's one instance of that, just because that gives really, really beautiful landscapes. Sorry, I'm a nerd.
I think that Mists of Pandaria will be a very fun expansion.
So do I. There's definitely, if you're skeptical about it, just keep in mind that, like we said last time, Cataclysm was lacking in endgame content because they had to focus so much on the 1 to 60 revamp, and Mists is not going to be like that. Mists is going to be much beefier for endgame players, so you should be able to take that and run with it. It's going to be awesome, because Blizzard doesn't make bad games. I don't know why people are so concerned. If you are not retarded, then you know that Blizzard does not make bad games. If you think that any game that Blizzard has made is bad, then you frankly have no taste in video games.
Guys, even Rock and Roll Racing was awesome.
It was.
Oh, and I want to put this in the words of WoW Krendor. It's not Kung Fu Panda. Shut up and take the Scroll of Resurrection.
Yeah.
And I have already gone on my rant about that. That Kung Fu Panda bullshit. But yeah, and like I say, this is coming from somebody who originally said I was going to leave the game if it was pandas, but if you actually look at any of the information that's been given to you, it looks great, and, you know, it's still an alpha. So
it is going to be an amazing expansion. We are hopefully looking at a beta in the next month, I want to say.
It's definitely likely that it's going to coincide, at least vaguely, with the D3 release, because especially once they get that off their plate, they're going to have more open resources to devote to WoW.
I really hope not.
I think
hope
it'll be
they
out
release
before
it.
D3.
I hope. I mean, guarantee. I'm going to say right here and now, they're letting people download it.
Well,
D3 is done. They're not working on it anymore. But I'm really hoping they release it before or a week or two after.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I didn't
mean that it was going to come like on the same day.
At the release of D3, no one's going to be on the beta servers.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
at all.
What he meant was
I meant that it was going to come out like within a couple of weeks range of it. I didn't mean that it was going to come out on the same day. That'd be stupid.
It'll probably be out around the middle of April. That's my expectation. I think next week, part of the information that we'll get from this big press event is the beta launch, and I guarantee you it'll be within a month. It'll be before D3 comes out. I will be very surprised if it's not, because they can't keep Cataclysm going for very long. They've got to aim for a late summer, early fall launch of MoP, and in order to do that, the beta will have to start in the spring.
Now, speaking of betas, I want to know when HOTS is coming out.
That won't be
HOTS?
Heart of the Swarm.
Heart of the Swarm.
Oh.
Nerd.
That won't
It's a
be
much more.
Apparently, they already have pricing on Amazon for it. Total
I'm
Biscuit
not
tweeted
sure
about
that
it.
that's completely accurate. That's been out for almost a year now. And they just changed the price down from 60 to 40. So
I don't expect it to be out until after, like, a month or two after Diablo 3. Maybe even longer, probably,
I don't know. I just hope we get a good look at it soon, because I'm getting really anxious. Some of the stuff that they were proposing before was really kind of stupid. I really want an update.
I would expect maybe a holiday season launch for that. Alright, that's all we've got for you guys today. We'll be back soon with Post-Nerf Episode 6, where we'll be talking a little bit about the Mists of Pandaria press event and other gaming industry coverage. we'll talk to you later.